Once again, welcome to the program. Let's begin in Gabon, which today swore in coup leader General Brice Nguema as the interim president. Mr. Nguema led soldiers to seize power just last week, hours after the Electoral Commission announced results from the recently concluded elections, where the incumbent Ali Bongo won again for a third time. Mr. Nguema was giving a standing ovation by military officers and officials as he arrived for the ceremony, and again just after he was sworn in by a panel of Constitutional Court judges. During his address after being sworn in, Nguema explained how the country's defense and security forces assumed the responsibility of preserving the country's democracy, refusing what he described as the electoral coup d'etat that had just been declared by the Gabonese Election Center. He highlighted the Constitution of Gabon as enshrining its institutions and specific procedures. He also says that he had instructed future governments to reflect without delay on the mechanisms to put in place in order to facilitate the return of the country to all political exiles. He also added that at the end of this transition, with the support of the Gabonese development partners, they, the military, intend to return power to civilians by organizing new, free, and transparent and credible elections in a climate of social peace. And what a moment it was in Gabon earlier today as General Brice Nguema was sworn in as the interim president. You saw in that latest video. The ceremony was televised live in a move designed to solidify the junta's grip on power. The military band played the country's national anthem. The audience stood for this, and then the Constitutional Court judge declared Nguema as the interim president, once again to cheers from the crowd, especially as a member of the military pinned decoration on Nguema's uniform and placed the chain of office on him as well. Let's bring in African Affairs analyst Achike today for this conversation. Achike, thank you so much for joining us on The World today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yes. So we see pomp and pageantry for an interim president. General Nguema has a lot resting on his shoulder at the moment. He hasn't said how long he will be in office, though, but he has promised to deliver free, fair, and credible election. There is a lot of uncertainty in Gabon's political horizon, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very new experience for the people of Gabon. And don't forget that they have been used to one dynasty, of political leadership for about 56 years. The Bongo family, Umar Bongo, and then the son, Ali Bongo. And so this is just this family dynasty that they have always known. They've not known anything different. In as much as there has not been any completely radical, perhaps change in terms of governance and what needs to be done, the reality is that the people are seeing this in a way as a new dawn, simply because the family that has been in charge are no longer there. This is what they have always known. And you can imagine that the vast majority of the population of Gabon have always known one family in the governance of their country. So, of course, obviously, in spite of that, it brings about new challenges. Because there would be much expectation if you look at the fact that consider the fact that people were dancing on the street, dancing for a new dawn. And they would also be expecting some changes, social and economic changes for the period that this government is going to remain in power.
But this is a different coup we're witnessing in Gabon. The military seized power, but it is still showing it will not be isolating Gabon for the rest of the world. Now, the military leaders just last week already said that Gabon will maintain international obligations. They shut the borders, but they lifted the sanctions on those borders. They have also shown the willingness to work with neighbors, and there is no hostility. What do you make of all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are different ways of looking at it. People could look at it from the perspective of perhaps, well, there was really no radical change from the Bongo to the present political leadership, the president that was sworn in today. And I think they will be looking at it from the perspective of, well, the coup was not so much of a radical coup, but it was simply, a palace coup. They didn't need to do so much. It was just about easing the former president out of office. And so from that perspective, we would say, yes, it was a different kind of coup. And then again, different in the sense that immediately the coup was undertaken, and they began to talk about transition almost immediately. I mean, this is something that will go down well with the international community. Of course, we know the intransigence that followed the other coups that we have seen in, French West-speaking, French-speaking West Africa, from Guinea to Mali to Niger to Burkina Faso. And all that, there was this back and forth between the military junta and the regional body, ECOWAS. But for this, it is different. Immediately they took over. And again, they didn't so much talk about the corruption within the Bongo dynasty, the Bongo family. They didn't dwell so much on it. They also didn't talk about punishing political actors. That's why a lot of us believe that it was an internal kind of arrangement between, perhaps elements of the, Ali Bongo family and then the military to quietly ease him out of office. And of course, you know that he suffered a stroke some time ago. And so it is absolutely different. But I think that essentially they are saying the right thing. They're doing the things that they would ingratiate themselves to the international community, who have been swift to rain down sanctions on, to fail to recognize the government of the day. But I have a feeling, a sneaky feeling, that what they have done so far will go down well with the international community, and that they will not be too hard on them. They talked about the affiliation of, the work that needs to be done with international development partners. And I think I agree, it's a completely different coup. The mindset is different. The outcomes that we're seeing is quite different.
Yeah, but when this coup happened, I mean, we saw the reactions from international partners, the United States, the EU, the African Union, all of them announcing their suspension from the Union, and France also, which insisted that an election took place and produced a winner who should be installed. But President Macron is, of course, talking about Ali Bongo, who has been president for 14 years now, while he understands the condemnation of the coup. But is it clear that Western powers are probably helping to perpetuate sit-tight leaders for Africa if they are supporting Ali Bongo after so many years in power?
Well, one might not blame the Western powers, immediately, and other governments, the African Union, who came down hard on the coupists. Don't forget that in the early hours of the coup, when a coup has been undertaken and has become successful, you wait because you want to know what will unfold. You want to know the dynamics that will play out. You want to know who the leadership is and the people behind the new leader. And so you begin to do a profiling of some of these actors to be able to, determine to some extent how you think, you can engage with them. And I think that, but at the same time, because of the spate of military coups in the West African sub-region, it was only natural that there would be a very swift condemnation of the coup that has taken place. But regardless of that, there is no way you cannot indict foreign governments. Talking about the West, and then France most especially, because France was at the time the colonial overlord. There's no way they cannot be indicted for encouraging some of the things that have led to these coups in the first place. During the height of the Cold War, some of these countries were involved in taking out their political leaderships across the continent that they were not comfortable with. Obviously, the world was divided between the East and the West. And so they carried out their international policies on the basis of their own, strategic national interests. And again, we've moved away from the period of the Cold War, but there is still this geopolitics that is, playing out. And so the Western countries have been very ambivalent, and very contradictory in their approach to governments and governance in Africa generally. And what drives them essentially has been their what they consider is their strategic national interest. And these national interests have nothing to do with the interest of host countries, like in this case, Gabon or Niger or wherever coups have taken place. So sometimes even when there is a lot of government malfeasance, a lot of bad, political leadership, the tendency has always been to just move along, just give them whatever support they'll be given and all that. Because, I mean, as long as they are there to protect the interests of the Western nations, they are not so much interested in the ability of or inability of these leaders, African leaders, to deliver on the dividends of democracy. And so you find out that in many of the places where these coups have taken place, the streets have been agog with rejoicing, by the people. And so this, in a way, is an indirect vote by the citizens of these countries against the, political leadership, the civilian political leadership in their countries. And this is what it signals is that these countries, especially the European countries, must be able to sit back and ask themselves what they have done wrong in all of these countries, and perhaps tell themselves that, look, things have just got to change. They really need to, retrace their steps and begin to look at new ways of engaging with this leadership across the continent in ways that will be beneficial to the people and not a few cliques of people who have benefited from governance.
But apart from the African Union suspension, is there anything else that African leaders can do with this coup situation in Gabon?
Yes, Africans they generally have not been impressed with their political leadership. And like I said, there is a revolt, by Africans, especially in those countries where coups are taking place. And there's this feeling that, yes, coup is a very bad thing. But that when elections are done, and then the electoral process is not allowed, to the electoral process is not allowed to go in the normal direction that it should go. And what it means is that you have shut the door against the people, because democracy essentially is about the people, for the people, and by the people. And so if you do not allow them, especially during the election period, then it means that you are simply caught in danger. And so for African political leadership must be more responsive and more responsible, because the reality is that a civilian governance is not an indication of a democracy. Some of the worst dictators in the African continent today have not been military despots. They have been civilian despots. And so the African political leadership should learn lessons from what is happening across the continent. Because in which other country this happens, the tendency is that their own people are going to rejoice that they have been ousted from power. So we hope that they will do a lot of reflection, a lot of deep thinking, and towards ensuring that they will change their ways and begin to provide really the dividends of democracy to their people.
All right. Thank you very much, African Affairs Analyst PoliticsToday. Thanks a lot for the contribution and the conversation we've had on The World Today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Let's head to Zimbabwe, where today was also a big day. Incumbent President Emmerson Mnangagwa was sworn in for a second term. His election win is being disputed by main opposition Citizens Coalition for Change, which boycotted the ceremony in Harare. Its presidential candidate, Nelson Chamisa, has described Mnangagwa as a gigantic fraud. But among the many guests invited to witness this ceremony was South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, whose presence was seen as an endorsement despite the regional criticism of the poll. Others who attended the ceremony, apart from the huge crowd of Mnangagwa's supporters, were Mozambique leader Filipe Nyusi and Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi. When we return in just a moment on The World Today, Kenyan President William Ruto welcomes leaders to Africa's first climate summit in Nairobi, Kenya. We'll bring you the details. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Well, we're going into extreme weather events that happened over the weekend. First, in the United States of Nevada, where Burning Man revelers endured festival grounds turned swamp on Friday and on Saturday. And that's after a heavy storm left them stranded in the Nevada desert. Looking at videos posted by festival attendees, we see people covering shoes and feet with plastic bags, and then afterwards enjoying the sunny skies following the storm and even dancing amid the mud. Authorities on Sunday say they were investigating one death during a rain event on Saturday, but they did not give details of the cause of the death nor the person's identity. The rainstorm that hit the Black Rock Desert near the end of the week is thought to have been the longest, the heaviest rainfall since the festival began more than 30 years ago. Revelers who have expected to be largely self-sufficient, apart from the festival's ethos, were told to take shelter and to conserve food, fuel and water But the bad weather meant that the portable toilet facilities were temporarily out of use because, of course, service vehicles weren't able to drive on the mud to empty them. When one festival attendee, that's David Date, described the problems ensuing from that storm over the weekend that affected the festival, it says the sudden departure of many camps left a trail of trash, tents, and infrastructure that spelled trouble for the self-sufficient temporary community of like-minded spirits that formed the Burning Man. Despite the conditions, the overall atmosphere was as festive as ever, maybe even more so. But those remaining said that they had plenty of food and drinks to keep the party going.
I've been bringing art to Burning Man for 7 years, and we're out here with a solid group of veteran burners. Some people have been doing this for 20 years, and we've never seen anything like this. We've gotten about an inch of rainfall over the last 48 hours. People are taking care of each other. We have food, we have provisions, we have shelter. So it's really just kind of a group effort to get through this until the roads dry up. Here's our camp. This is my van. I've got my tools and my cot. And we have our shade structures that would typically protect us from the sun. But now those are shedding water, and the water is accumulating on the tarps and then soaking in our tents. There's mud in between, so we have to put little walkways in. We have our kitchen back there, some RVs, a lounge, and a bar all the way up in the front. 70,000 people out here right now. The Burning Man organization made buses available so people could walk and get on these buses. And this was about 3 hours ago, but we just got another, batch of rain, and things have gotten soggy again. So that's kind of shut down that. But I believe maybe 5, 6, 7,000 people were able to make it out on bus. We are blessed with a Starlink satellite that's only about 50 feet, and the person was generous enough to open up the network. So everyone on this block has access to Wi-Fi, and that's the only way I've been able to be in contact with my family and make videos updating people about the situation.
Well, our Washington correspondent Maria Bird joins us now. Hello, Maria. It's good to see you.
Wow.
All right. Many are still getting used to the idea that, there was a festival like this in the United States. But just explain to us how viewers here in Nigeria will see this. What is the festival really about?
This festival is one that has been going on, as you said, for 30 years now. It brings 70,000 people to the Nevada, the Desert Rock area. And this area is one that is pretty desolate when the actual concert is not going on. And it's really a group of artists, all types of artists that come together to share art. And as you said, it has a very interesting name, the Burning Man, but it's really about releasing kind of the norms and to be able to celebrate art and create this temporary metropolis area, its own little city for those days. And so it's a different meaning to everyone that's there, but it's really about supporting art and spending time as artists.
But did the festival continue afterwards, or the event of the storm mark the end of festivities? I know that some of them said they had enough food and water to sustain them, but what is the details so far, the update on that?
Well, most people were stranded. There were some, as you showed, some studies of individuals who were able to walk for several miles until they could find a way to get to a closest city. That were able to get out, but there were only emergency vehicles being allowed in. As you can see, there was, the mud was just extenuous. They received 2 to 3 months worth of rain in 24 hours. So what typically would happen in 2 to 3 months happened in just 24 hours. And so obviously those types of conditions could not be sustained in a desert-like area. And then especially when you're talking about 70,000 people in an area with tents, campers, and all types of, large vehicles that just created quite a bit of a challenge. And so people were pretty much stuck there. So they were able to continue their celebrations. Those who were willing to use the mud and continue on. I did continue to have this type of an event, but obviously it was nothing compared to what they're used to.
And what about the rest of the state? I mean, we understand that there was also extreme weather events recorded in that area.
Yeah, so the rest of the state did experience some extreme weather conditions. We know that global warming is causing a major challenge across the world, and specifically we're seeing it very much so in the United States. But yes, they did experience some heavy rains, which obviously the desert is not used to experiencing. But when you talk about 70,000 people, it obviously created much of a more of a emergency conditions, more so than other parts of the state.
All right. Thank you very much. Our Washington correspondent Maria Burt, thanks for your contribution on The World Today. And let's continue with the weather condition events across the world. Those on the island of Taiwan had to bear with the rage of Typhoon Coup, which left a trail of destruction after it made landfall on the island on Sunday. From mountainous areas in central Taiwan to cities on the eastern and southern coasts, residents and workers removed fallen trees, fixed broken power lines, and even cleared debris just one day after the typhoon slammed into the island. Fire officials reported 116 injuries from that typhoon, but they were still trying to ascertain if the death of a man found by a roadside was linked to it. Coup is the first typhoon to hit the island in 4 years. It knocked out power of almost 260,000 households, while the electricity company says it is now working to restore power to at least 26,000 homes today. But Typhoon Coup is not done yet. It is still expected to make landfall on the border between the Chinese provinces of Guangdong and Fujian, near the city of Shantou. And talking about China, it is preparing also for Typhoon Hakui's arrival. Fishing boats moored at her harbors, a closed park and giant waves fanned by strong winds were also seen in the footage aired on state television. Chinese authorities have issued alerts and warnings of strong winds and large waves around the Fujian and Guangdong provinces and told ships to take precaution. Weather forecasters are saying that the typhoon is expected to fall on the border between Fujian and Guangdong near the city of Shantou, and that will happen by Tuesday morning, and the will weaken further after that. Authorities are still looking for missing people following records of heavy rainfall in Spain over the weekend, where 2 people died. They're now looking for at least 3 people who went missing as roads were shut, as were subway lines and high-speed train connections. In the capital, Madrid, authorities tackled almost 1,200 incidents overnight, and firefighters and police are still looking out for those not accounted for.
This was the scene across several regions of Spain on Sunday, as torrential rain and storms swept through the country. In the Madrid region, several roads were closed as half a dozen bridges were torn down by water overflowing the riverbanks, shutting roads, subway lines, and high-speed train connections. Emergency services tackled almost 1,200 incidents overnight, while firefighters and police were searching for one man in the rural area of Aldea del Fresno, southwest of Madrid. Drone footage shows the effects of the heavy rainfall that left the Toledo bus garage completely flooded. The National Weather Agency issued a maximum red alert in the Madrid region, Toledo province, and the city of Cadiz. Another aerial view from Madrid emergency helicopter services shows a swollen river after the torrential rainfall caused massive floods. Guardia civil officers rescued overnight several stranded neighbors at their rooftops as water completely engulfed streets in the town of El Alamo in the Madrid region. Floods in Alcánar, Tarragona, and Spain's east coast confined residents to their homes after 215 liters per square meter of rain fell in the past 24 hours. The local government advised residents to avoid unnecessary trips as massive floodwater could be seen rushing towards the shore on Sunday. Residents woke up to clean mud and debris after having to rescue some of their neighbors overnight, according to Juan Carlos Penafiel, who was visiting from Barcelona.
We organized amongst ourselves to make ropes with towels and bedsheets and used them to pull two young men who were grabbing onto columns. We pulled them to the top floor and saved them. It was terrifying, very, very scary with small children and women. Nobody showed up. We were left alone to save ourselves. It was terrifying.
The sudden downpour transformed streets into rivers of mud that dragged cars and trash bins in Madrid, Castilla-La Mancha, Catalonia and Valencia regions. Hail also fell in many areas.
Well, here in Africa, it's the start of the continent's first climate summit, and the host president, Kenya's William Ruto, has asked delegates to see the climate crisis as a unique opportunity for the continent to attract billions of dollars in investment. Organizers say they anticipate hundreds of millions of dollars in deals to be announced at a three-day summit, during which they aim to showcase Africa as a destination for climate investment rather than victims of flood, drought, and famine. African leaders are pushing market-based financing instruments such as carbon credits in a bid to mobilize funding that they say has been slow to arrive from rich world donors.
Unlocking the renewable resources that we have for a very long time, we have looked at this as a problem. It is time we flipped and looked at it from the other side. There are opportunities, immense opportunities as well. Before you guys went all over the place, we have ample renewable energy potential as well, and the natural assets and resources to green our own consumption, but also to meaningfully contribute to decarbonization of the global economy. We must see in green growth not just a climate imperative, but also a fountain of multi-billion-dollar economic opportunities that Africa and the world is primed to capitalize. And if you need any referencing, the UNEP is right here. The restoration and expansion of Africa's natural carbon sinks are not just an environmental imperative. In fact, they are an unparalleled economic goldmine. They have the potential to absorb millions of tons of CO2 annually, which should translate into billions of dollars if we were living in a fair world, improve livelihoods and millions of opportunities across this continent.
Attending the summit is UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and even US climate envoy John Kerry. Mr. Kerry addressed leaders earlier, saying the carbon market is needed more than ever as a tool to fight climate change.
We think Africa can benefit and the global south can benefit only if the carbon market grows. It's got to grow. You heard a mention of about 121 million. This market has to become a market in the billions in order to work effectively. And for that, we need to ensure the environmental integrity of this market. This is critical, not only to protect the climate, but also to create a thriving market, because people won't take the risk either of getting involved in a market that doesn't have the right standards and guidelines. So we're turning a corner. We're just not doing it fast enough or big enough. And our conviction is that the ETA provides us an opportunity with integrity to get concessionary funding that will then be used to make the transition happen faster.
And still ahead on the World's Day, well, how many chicken wings can you eat? What about more than 200 or even 10? You'd see what we have for you when you meet James Webb, this year's USA Chicken Wing Eating Champion. Welcome back. The European Commission says that it is aware a Swedish citizen is being detained in Iran, the latest known case of a foreign national being held amid political tensions with the West. Asked to comment on media reports, including a story in the New York Times that a former employee of the EU's diplomatic service had been held for more than 500 days, the Commission spokesperson, Peter Stano, declined to give any further details. The Swedish Foreign Ministry said a man in his 30s had been detained in Iran since April 2022, but did not identify the man.
We have not really a comment to make. I can only say that in a specific case, we are aware and we have been following very closely the case of a Swedish national detained in Iran. This case also needs to be seen in a context of the worrying trend of Iran arbitrarily detaining EU nationals or EU dual Iranian nationals for political reasons. We don't comment on individual cases for a very good reason, and all our actions in such cases are guided by having the interest and the safety of the individual concerned in mind. And again, on these cases, we are always working together with the country which has the consular responsibility for its citizens.
British head teacher Caroline Evans says that dealing with a construction issue faced by many of the country's schools is the hardest thing she ever had to deal with as a teacher. Many of the classrooms at the school she runs in Leicester, central England, have been effectively condemned due to the presence of reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete, a lightweight form of concrete commonly used during the 1960s and the 1980s, but now considered weak and unsafe. Authorities have so far ordered 104 schools to shut their buildings, while many others will also face issues. The revelations of crumbling school buildings only days before the start of the new term has sparked anger among the parents and the teachers, representing a new political headache for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak ahead of an election expected next year.
Because our school is a massive family, and all I could think about is we're going to be split up and where we're going to be split up to. Now, we were really lucky because the local authority have worked really closely with us. We've got buildings that are local authority owned quite close, so we could very quickly create a solution both for the staff to say, you know what, we're all still going to be able to go onto our play areas together, we'll still be able to see each other, and definitely for the children. We had to convert to sandwiches, which hasn't been ideal, but we worked with the kitchen staff. They got sandwiches so we could at least feed them. We've now got to a point actually where we've been able to work with the catering company in order to have hot dinners on a Monday and Friday. For those heads who got that message yesterday, you have my deepest sympathy because it is awful, and it's the hardest thing I've had to deal with, both emotionally but also just logistics. No concrete. I'll be testing. In fact, I might even stand on the playground and just check what is that's going in. Yeah, definitely no concrete will be going in, or no rack concrete.
And over in Syria, dozens of people were out today in the town of Swida protesting against President Bashar al-Assad. Protesters started nearly 2 weeks ago over poor living conditions and spiraled into renewed calls for political change. Syria is in a deep economic crisis that saw its currency plunge to a record 15,500 Syrian pounds to the dollar just last month in a rapidly accelerating freefall. It traded at 47 pounds to the dollar at the start of the conflict 12 years ago. Demonstrations broke out in Sweden in August over the removal of fuel subsidies. Home province of most of Syria's Druze community in Sweden remained in government hands throughout the war and was largely spared by violence seen elsewhere. India's moon rover has been switched off after completing its walk on the lunar surface just 2 weeks after its historic landing near the lunar South Pole. The Paragian rover from the Chandrayaan-3 spacecraft, which took off on July the 14th, was set into sleep mode. The Indian Space Research Organization has said in a post on X, formerly Twitter, late on Saturday. The statement from the country's space agency said the rover's payloads are turned off and the data collected has now been transmitted to the Earth via the lander. The Chandrayaan-3, that's the Mooncraft 3 in Sanskrit, lander and the rover are now expected to operate only for one lunar day, which is equal to 14 days on Earth. ISRO also hopes that the rover may reawaken for another set of assignments when the next lunar day starts on September the 22nd.
Competitive eating is the crucial in this contest more than any other.
Well, finally on the program, how fast and how many chicken wings can you actually consume in just 12 minutes or even less? Well, that question has already been answered by James Webb, an Australian contestant in this year's USA Chicken Wing Eating Championship. He broke the competition record, claiming his first win on his first ever appearance at that event in New York City on Sunday. Participants in the competition ate wings as fast as they could. Other contestants tried to remove chicken wings from giant bowls with blue cheese sauce using their mouths for the second part of the challenge. But Webb, who won the competition, ate a total of 276 chicken wings in just 12 minutes. And that's an average of 23 wings per minute.
I'm good. I'm happy. I'm shocked. I'm everything. I didn't even know.
Oh, what a competition. Well, that's it on The World Today for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Mwaladu.